The House will be in order. Anybody leaving the chamber will do so quietly. The member has the right to be heard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I do have a question. I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but I hope I'm going to spare the rope today, but if I'm getting hung, shouldn't the jury all be sitting here listening to me, to my side of the defense? And that is a question, Mr. Speaker.
The chair recognizes that a quorum is present. As with any proceeding before this body, we know members need to leave at certain times, as the member who is now at the well did a few minutes ago, for one reason or another. So for members to step outside, whether it's to take a call or for whatever reason it's appropriate, business can be conducted as long as we have a quorum and the chair recognizes the quorum is present.
Thank you for clearing that up for me, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to run to the restroom.
You're welcome.
Mr. Speaker, you mentioned yesterday Vermont President Calvin Coolidge. I don't know if you know, Mr. Speaker, Vermont is where I grew up. You said that this lady talked to the President Coolidge and said that she would like to have more than 3 words from him. And it was pretty funny what you said, that his response was, "You lose." So I thought that was pretty funny. Well, Mr. Speaker, I do have more than 3 words here to say. Yesterday you also said, Mr. Speaker, at 2:44 p.m., quote, "Proud of what we do in the House," unquote. Mr. Speaker, I cannot agree with you more that the New Hampshire House is a special place. Until now. Why are we doing this, Mr. Speaker? And for the record, Mr. Speaker, I did not receive the certified letter. And I hope you allow me to finish my speech like you did the other members, and I believe you will, Mr. Speaker, because I think you understand the severity of this. Why we're doing this, in my eyes, Mr. Speaker, is this is Washington, D.C. politics. Mr. Speaker, I'm asking all of us, please stop now. Please do not go down this path. New Hampshire politics, Washington, D.C. politics, the nastiness on both sides, I'm not just saying one side, Mr. Speaker, should not be in New Hampshire and should not be in the New Hampshire House of Representatives, that I agree with you is a very special place. Now I want to read Rule 67, which I think it's already been read, but I just want to make sure everybody understands. It says, all legislators, legislative officers, and legislative staff shall attend in-person education and training regarding sexual and other unlawful harassment and discrimination, unquote. Mr. Speaker, I take any harassment very, very serious. I have taken these classes in the past. Matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, I don't know if you know, but I started a tree business, almost starved to death the first couple of years, in 1991. I owned the business for over 20 years, and everything was fine, Mr. Speaker, until about 1994, I think it was, or 95, I hired this gentleman, a young kid. He was strong as an ox, great tree service kid. But we're driving down Railroad Street in St. Johnsbury, Vermont. It was a hot summer day, and the windows were rolled down, and there's Burt's Tree Service all over my chipper, which I had custom painted blue, just like my truck. Burt's Tree Service all over it with my numbers and everything, and out comes this kid with a cat call to this beautiful woman. She was pretty. And I went, holy crap, what just happened here? So I reached over and I said to his name, I said, we don't do that. So that is when Burt's Tree Service adopted the sexual harassment in, I don't know if I really talked about discrimination because I don't believe there was any, but the sexual harassment part of proper etiquette when we're in the vehicle with my logo on the side of the door. So, Mr. Speaker, I am very aware, and I've taken this class, like I said. At my current work that I work a couple days a week at, I've taken many classes. One, well, I'll skip that. Most of them were online also. That's where I believe this should have been. Now, I also know, Mr. Speaker, New Hampshire State House, has a secret sexual harassment fund that the House uses, or in the Senate, uses to pay victims off. I don't think...
Will the members suspend for one moment?
Yes.
I cannot speak about the other body, but I can speak about this House. The New Hampshire House of Representatives has no secret fund where we would ever pay anybody off who'd been sexually harassed. If something like that happened in this body, it would come out in the open and we'd let the whole world know about it. The New Hampshire House has no secret fund. If you want to talk about maybe the other body, which you probably shouldn't do, I can't talk about that, but I can talk about our House. We do not do anything secret. We have no fund. The member may proceed. State your point of order. The House will be in order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're all going through difficult times here today.
No, go ahead. Finish your
Okay.
statement.
One of the things that I've learned in my life is when one raises their voice, it doesn't
The House will be in order. The member has the right to be heard.
do anybody any good. If you don't like what he said or you disagree with what he said, there's no reason to ridicule him by raising your voice. That's all I'm saying, Mr. Speaker.
I raised my voice. I'll answer the member's question. Anybody can say anything they want about me personally. I don't care. But when you chastise this body and you chastise the people that dedicate their lives to serving here, and you hold us up for public ridicule by saying that we have something that we don't have and we'd never have as long as I was Speaker, and I know that the previous speakers from the party opposite never had. That's when I raise my voice, only in defense of this institution and its integrity. And I hope I've answered my friend's question from Brookline. The member may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I do apologize for mentioning the other people on the other wall. And I do apologize if I was misinformed about the payout in 2002 or 2004, whatever it was, from a fund, with misconduct. And I apologize if that is untrue, but I did hear it from several people that it did happen. So I do apologize for that again, Mr. Speaker. I mean no harm when I speak here. Mr. Speaker, the late Steve Valancourt has always, and I've mentioned this before, Mr. Speaker, he says that we have to be friends with everybody because today who we fight is going to be our best friend on another bill tomorrow. And I agree with that, Mr. Speaker, and I have done everything as possible as I can to be respectful and to be friendly with everybody. Occasionally, Mr. Speaker, I do fall off the wagon, and everybody has forgiven me the few times I have done that, or most people. So, Mr. Speaker, again, I am asking here, my friends on both sides of the party, do not go down this path. Mr. Speaker, I apologized at the time, and I made a bad joke one time with my friend from Londonderry, and a representative wanted to put me in the permanent journal. And both sides came together and defended me and saying, no, we don't do that in this House. I was blessed and honored that both sides did that, and again, I'm asking that we don't go down this path. Mr. Speaker, you know that I beat to my own drum for the 10 years I've been here. Some of the bills that I have fought on, and it was really funny, I wished I had a camera up here to take pictures of everybody's faces, was in 2015, Mr. Speaker, I went and saw the current Speaker at the time, Speaker Jasper, and it was an amendment that the opposite party put in about Meals on Wheels because, you know, the Republicans were cutting it out. And Mr. Speaker, I asked the Speaker then, Speaker Jasper, if I could speak on it, and he says, well, we got enough people speaking against this, so sit down, John. And I said, well, Mr. Speaker, I'm speaking for it. Well, he goes, what are you talking about? So I came up right here, and when I announced that I was supporting Meals on Wheels, both sides looked at me like I had three heads, Mr. Speaker. Another one is that I voted for constitutional carry, and I fought hard for that. So again, I beat to my own drum. But then the one that I really got a beating on, Mr. Speaker, and not from my party, but, you know, there was a lot of people upset at me about this. And I think about what Representative Valancourt said, is that we have to get along. And these, what we're doing here is not that. But I voted to repeal the death penalty. Now, I wasn't very happy with the vote. Matter of fact, the vote bothered me a lot because it passed by one vote. And I voted to repeal it. Now, I think most of us probably disagreed on why we voted that way. But then Article 30, Mr. Speaker, and let me read Article 30 first. The freedom of deliberation, speech, and debate in either house, and I'll just mention this house, of legislation is so essential to the rights of the people, it cannot be the foundation of any action, complaints, or prosecution in any other courts or place whatsoever. And that was dated July 2nd, 1784. And I just go back to, you know, we have to get along, Mr. Speaker. You know, and this is not doing it. This is Washington, D.C. politics, and I don't know. Now, I do want to talk about one subject, and I hope I can hold it together, and I think I will. But, Mr. Speaker, I don't know if you remember when I was a large man. I'm still a large man. Now, we have this sexual harassment class for 2 hours. And will it help? Research show it won't, because the person that's going to do it is still going to do it. So I just want to know why we don't have a class for sensitivity on large people. Because being called Barney the dinosaur and every other name when I was large was not comfortable, Mr. Speaker. But I smiled and just moved on. Now, the thing, Mr. Speaker, is I did have the sleeve surgery. I've lost 135 pounds, but at one point, when I hit the 100-pound mark, I used it in one of my speeches. I said, Mr. Speaker, if you know, since this bill has been introduced, I've lost over 100 pounds. And I was saying it, you know, to try to get support for my side of the argument. Everybody, Mr. Speaker, I believe everybody, stood up in this house and applauded me. And I'm telling you, it was the second and most emotional time in my life here. And the reason everybody did that, Mr. Speaker, is because we're supposed to get along. We're not supposed to play these politics games, if that's what's happening. Now, I want to talk about my mother. She's gone now. But she raised me right. I remember my mother saying this from a very young age. She says, John, when you go to school or you go out in public, you embarrass the name. I don't care if it's your fault, their fault, or nobody's fault. You are dead when you get home. And I believed my mother that I would be dead. I had a very healthy respect to my mother, and I love her. But when she said that, I listened. So I behaved. One time in third grade, the principal came in. I had to go to the principal's office. I can't even remember what I did. But she looks at me, and she was the teacher too, principal/teacher, and she says, John, I can't teach my class. I said, well, I'm sorry. And she goes, don't do it again, because if you're here, I can't teach my class. And she whacked me on the butt and sent me back. I behaved. Now, my mother did everything she could because she was a single mom. My father was in the military, and for some reason he decided to, and I've never shared this with anybody, but I'm going to today do it. He decided to have another family. So here's my mother stuck with 5 kids. I could only imagine what she went through. So every Sunday we had to be together. And that's where we learned a lot of things. Now I know by 6 o'clock, with 5 kids yelling at her, Ma, 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 about 6,000 times during the day, about 6:30, we could see Mom getting a little fidgety. And then all of a sudden, she would snap, and she'd say, if I hear Ma one more time, I'll kill every one of you. And, so we usually behaved. Now I want to talk about my 90-year-old neighbor. I asked her about it. Should I take the class? And she's a voter. And she called a lot of her 90-year-old friends. Every one of them said no. And I asked her why. And she says, John, because you know right from wrong. And if you take the class, it doesn't mean anything. And then she named a bunch of people that was previously mentioned that abused people. I am getting toward the end, Mr. Speaker. Now, my wife, I sat down with my wife before the last class. And I asked her, I said, honey, what do I do? Do I take the class or not? And I didn't get the answer what I thought. She looked right at me and she says, absolutely not. And I said, whoa, that's not the answer I was expecting. Because if she said yes, I probably would have taken it. But because of my wife, not because of her, but other reasons, but one of the reasons is, and I asked her why. And she says, you go to that state house and you tell them you are right. Your mother raised you right. And the other, I put you through the training. And you have passed 100%. So again, Mr. Speaker, I've taken a lot of training on this subject. Now quickly, Mr. Speaker, and I am wrapping it up, I want to talk about Hot Dog Day. I love Hot Dog Day, and I love what it does. I love what it brings together. It brings all of us together. But let me tell you something, Mr. Speaker. In 9 years, have I done it 8 years? No, 9 years. Yeah, maybe 8, 9 years, whatever it is. It's been a long time. 8 years, this is going to be the 9th, because I didn't do it my first year. Twice, Mr. Speaker, I received a thank you letter from the dog group. That's it. I never wanted to tell anybody that because it doesn't matter. I don't care. But twice have sent me nice letters saying thank you for everything and the money is going to be well spent. The other is, Mr. Speaker, The Humane Society, they give out awards all the time to reps for putting in bills and stuff like that. But not once, and not that I want to be recognized, but not once has the Humane Society ever recognized the good I have done for dogs. And that's okay, Mr. Speaker, because I know the good that I do. And the reason I believe, it's because I'm John Burt. I'm very vocal. I'm very stubborn, stuck in my ways. I don't know about stubborn, but maybe my wife would say I am. But I'm staying the course. I have never swayed from my conservative values in my upbringing. Now, yes, it has been 8 years. So over 8 years, I've raised 35,000, or we have. It's not me. It's all of us, because we can't have Hot Dog Day without you guys. We've raised over $35,000 for dog groups, 8 dog groups. That's a lot of money. I'm hoping to break a record this year. We already have the date. We already have the dog people, and, I hope we can do it. Now, I want to briefly talk about what a representative in Manchester did for me, a Democrat representative, and I think most of you were here. This was the most emotional time I could not handle. She gave me the Golden Hot Dog Award. I cannot tell you how much that meant to me. And the reason for that is, again, I don't want recognition for anything that I do good. I would like not anything recognition for the bad stuff, but, but here we are. But Mr. Speaker, that just showed me that my hard work has brought us together more times than anybody else has in the 8 years or the 10 years I've been here. But this really should not happen, what we're doing here. We need to all get along, and we do not need these extreme political one-sided issues. So I'm asking my friends on both sides not to go down this path of no return, because once we go down this path, we can't return. We can't. Now, I'm almost done, Mr. Speaker. This is the last paragraph, or very close to the last. Please vote against this, and let's remain friends, but bottom line, I really don't care what your vote is in what, 4 minutes? I want that understood. I hope everybody does the right thing and vote this down. But I'll walk out of this State House with my head held high. And whoever votes to sanction me, or whatever the word is, slap my hand. I'm just going to look the other way, and we'll continue to be friends, because that is the only way we're going to survive in this building. We need to get rid of the extreme partisan sides. I work in my committee, even my former committee, Mr. Speaker. I don't know if you remember where I used to be over on criminal justice, but when I was there, and I'm looking at my members right there, we had a lot of fun. I made a lot of friendships. The representative from Portsmouth, she carried a big bag, and I was always scared what she had in that bag. So, Mr. Speaker, and lastly, about the Dr. Seuss gentleman yesterday, when he talked about that, I thought about it, and he's right. We can stand here together face to face and argue all day, but we must remain friends. So lastly, Mr. Speaker, I'm asking you and everybody here to vote this down. So I'm thinking that's going to be a red vote. Because don't go down this path of no return. Because once it's here, we're never going to get rid of it, and then the nasty politics will be in New Hampshire, and we don't need that. We don't need Washington, D.C. in the state of New Hampshire. We have fought to keep that away from us. Sadly, we have allowed it into this building today. We could stop it right now. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Will the member yield to a question?
I will.
Representative Horn, you may inquire.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the representative for taking my question. When the majority rule put Rule 67 into place and brought that specter into our House, how did that make you feel?
You know, I'm not opposed to learning more, you know, of the harms, I'm trying to think of the right word to use, of the harms that, you know, harassment can cause. But to force it that we have to be here for 2 hours, and again, I did not receive that certified letter, but to be forced to do it when I'm an elected official, that is what I objected to. And then when I started talking to my voters and my family and my wife, and they all said no, I couldn't get anybody in my town to say yes. And I was looking because I'm like, all right, I'll cave and go do it. But I couldn't get one of them because they all know me, and they all said, John, you're a strong man, conservative. That's why we vote for you. That's why you're the #1 vote every year. And keep on moving. Stay with it. So that's why. Thank you.
Will the member yield to another question?
Yes.
Representative True, you may inquire.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the representative for taking my question. The motion before us is whether we should reprimand you for being in violation of Rule 67. Now, notwithstanding the fact that it is a very poorly written rule, and in fact is an open-ended rule, that you shall take training without any time limit, just someday you shall. I'm not accusing people of hot dogging on this political issue, but why do you feel people would vote to reprimand you for violation of a rule that you have not yet violated? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I cannot answer motives of any member here, nor will I. I just feel that Washington, D.C. politics is creeping up this way, and I think that's why I'm standing before everybody.
Will the member yield to another question?
Yes.
Representative Baldessaro, you may inquire.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Representative, for taking my question. I didn't hear the list of names, and I know they're being called by one. A few weeks ago, there was a representative that changed a vote in the committee, and I'm not mentioning no names. I'm just trying to find out, is his name, do you know, you probably know who I'm talking about, that changed the vote. Is his name on this list today that's going to be reprimanded also, do you know?
I can answer that question for the member. That issue has been brought to my attention by my friend, the deputy leader. It's been addressed at the highest authority that we have on dealing with matters of that nature. I have sent a letter off today to take care of that issue. It's not before the House at this time, and since it is a personnel matter, I'll make sure that nobody mentions any names until it's adjudicated by the appropriate body that is set up to deal with that, and I hope my friend understands my answer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, but can I ask you, just like the people here today, my fellow reps, because I'm reading us on Twitter on being slammed, this is political in my opinion, but can I ask the Speaker, did you do the same to the 14 reps, Republicans, that you're doing to the Democrats, where they're going in front of a board or something that you called and us Republicans aren't?
That question is inappropriate, but I'll give you a 5-second response because I think every member deserves at least that. The 14 members that have been are subject to the sanctions of this body are in this predicament because they did not, or it's alleged that they did not follow the rules of this House. This is something for this body to deal with. The matter that the member brought up earlier could possibly be a question of ethics, and that goes to a different group that has the authority to adjudicate that. This isn't the proper forum for issues of violating of House rules.
Then I apologize, Mr. Speaker, for bringing it up if this is wrong. But I just wanted to make sure that it's a two-way street, Mr. Speaker, and what's going on is not right. And we see what's going on, and it's only the Republicans.
The member is now making a speech, and I presume that was another would you believe? Yeah, okay. The question before the House is, should the member from Goffstown, Representative Burt, be reprimanded by this body? This will be a division vote. Members will kindly take their seats. A roll call has been requested. Is that sufficiently seconded? It is sufficiently